The second I saw my granddaughter's fiancé, the room disappeared. The music, the clinking glasses, the laughter, all gone. Because the man holding her hand, the man she was about to marry, was the same predator who'd wiped out my savings and vanished 10 years ago. I dropped my champagne flute. It exploded on the tile. Everyone stared at me. He didn't. He just smiled that same wolfish smile and said, "Mrs. Benson, it's an honor to finally meet you." If you're listening, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I really do read them. My name is Nora Benson. I'm 67 years old, a grandmother of 3, and I used to believe that once you'd been fooled by a con man, you'd never fall for one again. Turns out, they don't always come for you the second time. Sometimes they come for your grandchildren. 10 years ago, I was 57 and 6 months into being a widow. My husband, Frank, died on a Tuesday afternoon in aisle 7 of the hardware store, right between the paint and the power tools. One moment he was asking if we needed more light bulbs, the next he was on the ground, and my life was split into before and after. In the after, I could barely breathe. That's when I met Victor Hale. He showed up at the grief support group at our church, tall, well-dressed, a little gray at the temples, and just the right amount of broken in his voice when he talked about losing his wife to cancer. He remembered everyone's names. He stayed behind to stack chairs, and he always seemed to end up next to me, offering quiet comments that made the heavy meetings feel survivable. You know how it goes from there. Coffee after group, then dinner. Then the first time he brushed a tear off my cheek and told me I deserved to feel alive again, not just half alive in Frank's shadow. I was an accountant before I retired. I knew numbers. I did not apparently know people. So when Victor started talking about a safe municipal bond fund where he and a few of his friends were putting their money, I ignored the little alarm bells. "It's boring, Nora," he said, laughing, "but boring is good when you're our age." I signed. $140,000, my nest egg, the money Frank and I had scraped together over 30 years. 3 weeks later, Victor's phone went straight to voicemail. His apartment was empty. The investment firm address was a UPS store. The police were sympathetic but helpless. "He's done this before, ma'am," the detective said. "These guys change names like socks." For a long time, I blamed myself more than him. I should have known. I should have seen. So I rebuilt. I picked up part-time bookkeeping, sold the lake cabin we'd loved, and swore 2 things. I would never again be that naive, and if I ever saw Victor Hale again, I would not freeze. I lied to myself on both counts. Fast forward 10 years. My granddaughter Ava is 26, a pediatric nurse with a laugh that could light up a morgue. She grew up more in my house than my daughter's, long story, so she's as much mine as anyone's. She invited me to her engagement cocktail party in downtown Seattle. "Grandma, you're gonna love 'em," she said over FaceTime, flashing a ring that could signal ships. I walked into that rooftop restaurant, proud as anything, smoothing the wrinkles from my blue dress. Then I saw him. He was standing near the bar, surrounded by people, telling some story that had them all laughing. Same thick dark hair swept back, same scar through one eyebrow, same watch he used to check and say, "Look at that, we've talked for 3 hours." He looked older. So did I, but Monster's age too. Ava slipped her arm through his.
Grandma, this is Michael Summers, my fiancé. Michael, this is my favorite person in the world. He turned. For half a second, his eyes widened. Half a second where Victor looked straight at the woman he'd gutted and vanished from. Then his smile clicked into place. He held out his hand. "Mrs. Benson," he said, warm and polite. "I've heard so much about you. I'm honored." I dropped my glass. 100 heads turned as champagne and shards scattered across the floor. "Mom, are you okay?" my daughter gasped. I'm fine," I lied, because the alternative was screaming across the room. "Ava, sweetheart, your fiancé is a predator who stole my life savings and faked his dead wife." Instead, I stared at his hand. On his finger was the same chunky silver ring he'd worn the day he convinced me to trust him like Frank would have wanted. Victor, Michael, whatever he was calling himself now. He didn't flinch. He just bent to help the server clean up my mess and said, just loud enough for me to hear, "First impressions can be overwhelming."
That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second. I could be wrong, right? Lightning doesn't strike twice in the same family, but lightning doesn't care about the address. By 3 a.m., I was at my kitchen table with my laptop and a pot of terrible coffee. I searched Michael Summers, Seattle investment consultant. He existed, sort of. Website, LinkedIn, articles quoting him about ethical investing, photos of him in suits at charity galas. But the timeline was weird. Every public trace of Michael Summers started 5 years ago. Before that, nothing. No college, no work history, no photo of a gawky 18-year-old holding a red Solo cup. "People don't just appear at 40, I muttered. The next day, I walked 2 doors down to my neighbor Joe's house. Joe is 72, big as a fridge, with more opinions than hairs on his head. He also spent 35 years as a detective before retiring. He answered in his slippers. "You look like you've seen Bigfoot." "Worse," I said. "I've seen my past." I told him everything. Victor, the fake fund, the engagement party, the new name. Joe listened without interrupting, which is how I knew he was taking me seriously. When he finished, he rubbed his chin. "You still have paperwork from back then?" "They didn't catch him, Joe. They made copies of everything." "Good," he said, "because I still play poker with a couple guys in fraud. If your Michael and your Victor are the same guy, they'll want to know." He took my old file like it was a live grenade. Within 3 days, he was back with a folder thicker than a Sunday paper. "You were right," he said without preamble. "He's been busy." The folder was full of women. Not literally, thank God. Photos, reports, names highlighted in yellow. Vivian Lake, Portland. Oliver Hayes, when he took her for 90 grand. Rachel Kim, Denver, went by Daniel Hart. She lost her condo. Priya Patel, Austin. Marcus Hale, cleaned out her business line of credit. Each scam neat and surgical, each one ending with him disappearing a few days before a big milestone, closing on a house, buying a clinic, paying vendors. And in the middle of the timeline, me. Nora Benson, Seattle, Victor Hale, $140,000. Joe tapped the last page. "And now he's Michael Summers and engaged to your granddaughter, who stands to inherit about $800,000 when my daughter's estate closes, plus her own savings. She's careful, but she trusts people." "Especially people who look at her like that," Joe muttered. "It's textbook. Same age range, same pattern. Only difference now is he's aiming higher. Your Ava's money, maybe your daughter's house, too." I swallowed a lump. "We go to the police?" "We will, but right now we have a bigger problem.
Con men like him don't just steal money. They cut people off from anyone who might warn them. I thought about the last few months, how Ava had been too dizzy for our weekly brunch, how my texts often went unanswered. Victor/Michael hadn't just come for our wallets.
I decided to talk to Ava gently. We met at a coffee shop she loved. Plants hanging from the ceiling, indie music playing, latte art shaped like swans. She looked tired but glowing. "Grandma, I'm so glad you agreed to meet." Michael felt awful about the glass incident. "I'm fine," I said, "but there's something we need to talk about." Her face immediately tightened. "If this is about him being too old for me, I swear it's not that," I said quickly. "Sweetheart, have you ever heard of a man called Victor Hale?" She blinked. "No, should I have?" "He used to go by that name," I said. "Michael. 10 years ago, I met him at church. He told me his wife died of cancer. He convinced me to invest in his fund. He took my money and disappeared." Ava stared at me like I just told her Santa was a serial killer. "Grandma, what are you saying?" "I'm saying your fiancé is a professional con artist. He's done this to women all over the country. We have records. My neighbor Joe used to be a detective." She cut me off, anger flaring. "So this is what this is. You talked to some detective neighbor, and now you're accusing the man I love of being some kind of criminal?" "Honey, listen." "No, you listen." Her hands were shaking. "Michael told me this might happen, that you'd had a bad experience in the past and you might project it onto him. He said he'd understand, that he'd try his best, but he warned me you might try to sabotage us." "He'd beaten me there." "Did he mention Portland, Denver, Austin?" I asked quietly. "Did he tell you about the other names?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Stop, just stop. You don't get to do this to me." "Ava, please, just let Joe show you the file. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize till the day I die." She stood so fast, her chair scraped the floor. People turned to look. "You know what's funny?" she said hoarsely. "I always thought you were the one person who'd be happy when I finally found someone good. Instead, you're this." "I'm trying to protect you," I whispered. "No, you're trying to control me. And if that's how it's going to be, maybe you shouldn't come to the wedding." It felt like she'd slapped me. "Ava." She called me when you're ready to be supportive, and she walked out. I sat there in a room full of strangers drinking their coffee and scrolling their phones, and I cried like a child. The barista quietly slid a napkin toward me. "Rough day?" "You have no idea," I said. That night, Joe and I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by files and cold meatloaf. "She uninvited you?" he asked, incredulous. "Apparently I'm projecting," I muttered. "He told her to expect it. He built that defense in advance." Joe whistled. "He's good. I hate how good he is." "What now?" asked. "Wait until he drains her accounts and runs? Hope the police catch him before he does it again to someone else's granddaughter?" Joe drummed his fingers. "He's confident, arrogant, and that's useful. Guys like him think they're smarter than everyone. They slip when they show off." "Show off to who?" "Ava won't listen. My daughter thinks he walks on water because he got us reservations at that sushi place that always has a 3-month waiting list." "We don't need them to listen yet," Joe said slowly. "We need him to talk." The retired detective gleam came into his eyes. "You still have that old voice recorder I gave you when your phone kept deleting your grocery lists?" "I did. And I still play cards with a guy in bank fraud who owes me a favor. If we can get our charmer to bite at the right bait, we might get his hands dirty on our timeline, not his." "What bait?" I asked. Joe looked at me over his glasses.
The same bait he took last time, only this time the investment belongs to the bank, and they're the one setting the trap. I leaned back, heart racing. I'm wanting to pretend to invest with him again? Not pretend. We'll open a legitimate account flagged for fraud monitoring. You'll offer him a chunk of money big enough to tempt him, but not big enough to ruin you if something goes wrong. When he tries to move it offshore, the bank steps in. We get recordings, the DA gets a case. And Ava, I whispered, what about her? If we do this right, Joe said, she gets proof she can't argue with. I stared at my hands. I told myself I'd never let him near my money again. Now I'm thinking about offering it up on a silver platter. Joe shrugged. Sometimes the only way to catch a lad is with cheese. I sighed. I hope I'm not the cheese. I texted Michael 2 days later. Hi, Michael, it's Nora. Can we start over? I'd like to buy you lunch and apologize. His reply came in under a minute. Of course. I'd love that. Smiley face. We met at a quiet Italian place by the water. Joe was 3 tables away, pretending to read a newspaper. The recorder was pinned inside my cardigan. Michael kissed my cheek like we were old friends. Nora, you look wonderful. Ava was so upset after your coffee. She loves you so much. His concern sounded real. It always had. I handled that badly, I said. I'm sorry. Losing Frank, losing the money afterward, it left scars. I saw you and panicked. I understand completely, he said, taking my hand briefly. If someone hurt my mother like that, I'd be suspicious too. It took every ounce of self-control not to yank my hand back. I want to fix things. For Ava's sake. I don't want her choosing between us. That makes 2 of us, he said warmly. I told her you'd come around. Of course he had. We talked about nothing for a while. Wedding venues, cake flavors, the weather. He was smooth, attentive, never once letting his mask slip. Finally, I dropped the bait. There's another reason I wanted to talk, I said, pretending to fiddle with my napkin. I came into a bit of money from selling the cabin. His eyes sharpened, almost imperceptibly. The cabin Frank and I had by the lake. I've been holding on to it, but the upkeep is too much. The buyer wired the money yesterday. How much are we talking? He asked, casually sipping his wine. About $180,000, I said, and I'm terrified of losing it like I lost the rest. He leaned forward, concern etched across his handsome face. Nora, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were struggling. I'm fine, I lied, but I'd like to do something for Ava. Set aside a little for her future, and maybe fix that mistake I made. I let my voice wobble, let my eyes shine. I want her to be safe. I want to be useful, not just the grandma who brings pie. He covered my hand with his. You are not just anything. Ava adores you, and there are ways to make that money work for both of you. Like investing? I said, as if the word made me nervous. Exactly, he said. I could help you structure something where the principal is safe but grows. We could even create a small joint account in both of your names so she's taken care of if anything ever happens to you. There it was, the hook. I wouldn't know where to start, I murmured. The last time I thought I did, we all know how that ended. He smiled, soft and reassuring. Then let me take care of it. No pressure, no rush. You can look over everything first. Full transparency. Joe's phone buzzed on the next table. It was a signal. We had enough on tape to prove Michael was soliciting access to my funds under false pretenses. I pretended to hesitate. Maybe could you write down what you'd suggest? Something simple. I like seeing things in black and white. Of course, he said. I'll put together a proposal. In fact, there's an account type at North Sound Credit Union that would be perfect. I know the manager there. Low risk, high liquidity. If you're comfortable, we could meet together and open it. You can watch exactly what I do." He wasn't biting. He was chewing. I smiled. That would make me feel better. We set an appointment for Friday morning at the bank. As we walked out, he squeezed my arm. "Thank you for trusting me, Nora. I promise you won't regret it." Under my cardigan, the recorder blinked red. "We'll see," I said.
North Sound Credit Union had agreed to cooperate after Joe's poker buddy in fraud explained the situation. On Friday, they gave us a small glass-walled office, a polite advisor, and a lot of hidden cameras. Michael arrived exactly on time in a suit that probably cost more than my car. He greeted the banker like an old friend. "Mark, thanks for fitting us in." "Always happy to help, Mr. Summers," the man said. He'd been briefed. "So today we're setting up a new account for Ms. Benson." "Joint," said Michael smoothly. "She'd like me to help her manage the funds for estate planning." I watched him fill in paperwork, his pen moving confidently across the forms. He wrote in a routing number and account info I didn't recognize. Joe had warned me he might try to divert the funds immediately into a shell account. The bank's systems would catch it, but only if he actually attempted. I handed over the cashier's check from the cabin sale. It looked so small in his manicured fingers. As the banker stepped out to process things, Michael turned to me. "Feels good, doesn't it, taking control?" "I'm still nervous," I said honestly. "That's normal," he soothed. "Change is scary, but Ava's going to be so grateful when she finds out what you've done for her." I almost asked if he meant emotionally or financially. The banker came back with a politely furrowed brow. "I'm sorry, Mr. Summers, but there seems to be an issue with the receiving account you've listed for transfer." Michael's smile didn't waver. "That's strange. It's one of my business accounts." "Yes, well, our fraud department flagged it as belonging to a known high-risk entity. They're on the line now and would like to speak with both of you." He tapped a button. A voice came over the speaker. "Mr. Summers, this is North Sound Fraud Prevention. For security, can you confirm your full legal name and date of birth?" "Michael James Summers, April 3rd, 1978, he said smoothly. "Thank you. And your previous legal names?" There was the slightest pause. "I'm sorry," he said. "Your previous legal names," the voice repeated. "We have records for Victor Allen Hale, Daniel Hart, and Oliver Hayes sharing your social security number. For compliance purposes, we need you to confirm." The color drained from his face. "That's a mistake," he said tightly. "I don't know those names." I'd seen him run before. I knew the signs. His knee bounced once, his eyes flicked to the door, his fingers twitched like they were itching to grab the check and bolt. I placed my hand on my handbag where the recorder sat, still running. "Funny," I said lightly. "I know at least one of them." He shot me a look that could have cut glass. The banker stood. "Mr. Summers, I'm afraid until this is resolved, we can't proceed with the transfer. For the safety of our client, we'll be holding the check in a pending account." "A what?" he snapped. "It's standard procedure when fraud is suspected," the banker said, backing towards the door. He'd done his part. Michael turned to me, smile pasted back on like bad wallpaper. "This is just a misunderstanding. We'll sort it out, but maybe we should step outside." The door opened. 2 uniformed officers and a woman in a blazer walked in. "Michael Summers, or Victor Hale, or whatever name you prefer today. I'm Detective Ramos with Financial Crimes. We'd like to ask you a few questions." He started to protest, but it was too late. They asked him to stand. When he refused, they helped him. His voice, smooth and charming a moment before, climbed an octave. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You can't just walk in and—" "Nora," he snapped suddenly, turning to me. Tell them you asked me to help you." My hand shook, but I held his gaze. "I did ask you to help me," I said. That's what you promised 10 years ago, too. Recognition flashed, then fury. You vindictive old... Careful, Detective Ramos warned. We're recording. He shut his mouth, jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grind. As they cuffed him, he darted his last look at me. This isn't over, he hissed under his breath. You just cost your granddaughter the best thing that ever happened to her. I almost laughed because behind the glass wall, my granddaughter was watching everything.
When we were spent, Anne invited me from the wedding. That part was real. The part where she stopped talking to me for 2 weeks, also real. But the part where Michael thought he'd completely turned her against me, that was his mistake. 2 nights after our awful coffee shop fight, Ava came over to drop off some things I'd left at her apartment. She didn't knock, she just walked in, found me at the sink, and said, "Okay, tell me everything without trying to protect my feelings." I turned off the faucet. "I thought you didn't want to hear it." She said, "I don't, but I also know you don't throw words like con artist around just because you're bored. So tell me, all of it. Then I'll decide whether I'm furious or grateful." So I did. The old scam, the file Joe dug up, the pattern of women, the new name, the lunch, the bait. At the end, she sat very still. "He told me about his rough patch after his wife died," she said slowly. "He said he made some bad investments and lost everything, but it taught him compassion." It sounded rehearsed. "He's had a lot of practice," I said. She looked up, eyes wet. "Do you think he ever loved me at all?" I wanted to say no, to make it simple, but lies hadn't helped anyone so far. "I think he loves the way he makes you look," I said gently, "and the access he gives you. Whether he's capable of loving you for you, I don't know, but the way he treats the women he's used says more than his words." She wiped her nose. "So what do? Call off the wedding and watch him vanish to hurt someone else?" Or, came Joe's voice from the doorway. He'd arrived halfway through and listened quietly. "Your grandma pretending to forgive him, you pretending to still be blind, and all of us pretending to be worse liars than we actually are." She took a shaky breath. "I can pretend." So when I asked Michael to lunch, Ava already knew. When I told her about the cabin money, she helped me juggle the numbers so I wasn't risking everything. When we walked into the bank, Joe and the fraud department had been working for days. And when Michael was cuffed and led past the waiting area, the first face he saw beyond the glass wasn't mine. It was Ava's. She stood up slowly, phone in hand. She had recorded the meeting from the hallway through the glass. Their eyes met. "Ava," he began, voice suddenly soft again. "Sweetheart, this is..." She held up a hand. "Don't," she said quietly. "You practice that look on too many women." He froze. "I watched you sign those forms with a different name. I watched you try to move my grandmother's money before the ink was dry. The only thing I want to know is, was any of it real for you?" He opened his mouth, closed it again. For once, the great performer had no script. Detective Ramos guided him toward the door. "Wait," he said suddenly, twisting back. "Ava." She looked at him steadily. "You taught me something. I used to think trust was about ignoring red flags for the sake of love. Turns out, it's the opposite." They let him out. The door swung shut behind him with a soft, final click. It took more than a year for everything to shake out. Michael or Victor or Oliver or whatever name he'd been born with turned out to have a rap sheet that stretched across 6 states. With the bank recordings, my tapes, and statements from other victims Joe and Detective Ramos tracked down, the DA had enough to charge him with multiple accounts of fraud and identity theft. At his trial, I sat behind the victims' rows and watched woman after woman take the stand. Vivian from Portland, Rachel from Denver, Priya from Austin.
Different accents, different ages, same hollowed-out look when they talked about realizing love had been a project plan. Each time, Michael watched them with the faintest hint of a smirk, like he was grading their performance, until Ava took the stand. She walked up in her simple navy dress, hair in a bun, no jewelry, no engagement ring. "Miss Benson," the prosecutor asked, "how did you first meet the defendant?" "At the gym," she said. "He offered me a towel and then a protein shake. After that, he just kept showing up." "And did you love him?" She paused. "Yes," she said finally, "I did, but I understand now that I loved an actor playing a role, not the person behind it." "And how do you feel now?" She looked at Michael. "I feel grateful," she said. There was a murmur in the courtroom. "Grateful?" the prosecutor repeated. "Yes, because my grandmother and I caught him before he could do to me what he did to them." She gestured toward the victim's bench. "And because I learned what real protection looks like." When the judge handed down a 25-year sentence, there was no dramatic outburst, no last-minute concession. Michael just nodded, like he was mentally calculating how old he'd be when he got out and whether there'd still be lonely hearts with bank accounts. There will be, of course, but there will also be women like Vivian and Rachel and Priya and Ava and me who talk, who share, who warn.
Ava didn't swear off love forever. She took a break. She went to therapy. She learned to separate butterflies from danger signs. 2 years later, she introduced me to a shy paramedic named Jonah, who brought me lemon bars the first time we met and spent half an hour asking about Frank's model trains. Their wedding was small and loud and perfect. No champagne glasses were harmed in the making of it. As for me, I learned some late-in-life lessons. Lesson 1, scars don't make you weak. They make you hide to fool if you respect them instead of hiding them. Lesson 2, protecting your family doesn't always mean shielding them from pain. Sometimes it means letting them see the danger and standing beside them while they face it. Lesson 3, the older women in the room, we see more than people think. We just don't always speak up loudly enough. This time I did. And if you've listened this far, maybe you will too. For yourself, for your daughter, for your granddaughter, for some future girl scrolling her phone and thinking, he seems perfect. Thanks for staying with me to the end. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments. Your voice, especially your grandma voice, matters more than you know.